All right, ladies and gentlemen, you should be hearing me now. I can see that there is audio there, so I'm pretty sure that you will be hearing my voice this time around. Pretty sure about that. All right, you guys can hear me. Don't forget, you can chat in the chat section right across there. Chat in the chat section right across there. All right, I'm just gonna make sure that I am. You can chat in the chat section right across there. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. So we are good. You should be hearing audio this time. All right. Cool. So let's talk about Cyborg and the DCEU and a few other things. We'll start with a piece of scripture, and I'm going to get into it one time. And let me go to screen share right here so I can get straight into the Cyborg stuff. Booyah. Right there one time. Okay. All right. So the scripture comes from Psalms 119, verses 113 to 114. It says, I hate vain thoughts, but your law do I love. You are my hiding place and my shield. I hope in your word. You know, a lot of times, man, we actually do things which are pretty useless. They don't really have any importance, really, and substance to them. They don't help nobody, nothing. And those are what we call vain thoughts. Some of them are negative. Some of them are just not really constructive. They don't really do any good. But he says, your words I do love. Goodness, man. Who doesn't love goodness? You are my hiding place and my shield. He's not talking about escapism, not a hiding place to escape, but a hiding place against an adversity. Adversity or an enemy. Adversity is also known as shaitan. And my shield. And for me to show you this, I'll just have to show you what a shield can do. So come out of this for a second. And let me just show you what a shield would look like. So here I am here. And if you look carefully, I'm actually going to stand up a little bit. If you look here, this is my heart, okay? So if I shield my heart with my hand, it's blocked, right? So it protects. So a hiding place and shield is the same thing. It's like you're enveloped, you're protected by it. And it goes on in the scripture to say this last thing here. It says to me, I hope in your words. I hope in what you say. I hope in you, goodness of you. And so we're going to see that in what we're about to talk about. Let me go back to what I was doing a minute ago. So let's go screen share. Well, back up there. And what we're going to talk about is a little bit more detail about Cyborg. Because there's this misconception about, you know, what we saw in the movie concerning Cyborg. So I just want to make it abundantly clear. But first, let's start off with something that's a really interesting question. And maybe it is even a plot hole in Justice League. And that is, in Justice League, Diana says to Bruce Wayne, what about the other one, Victor Stone? All right. How does she know his name is Victor Stone? I know she saw footage of Cyborg's birth in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I know that. But still, she did not know his name was Victor Stone. Maybe she did some homework in between. Let me just zoom in on this this meme here. I'm zooming in all the way. So this is what Diana, you got to ask yourself, how did Diana know about Victor Stone's name? And so at the bottom of the meme to the right here, it says this: there isn't any direct evidence that Diana had found Victor's name, but in BVS, the recording gives Silas Stone's name. And if you just look up here at the recording here, any one of these, I may have to zoom in again a little bit more. Let's get it nice and big there. All right, and if we look into the left-hand corner here, you will see journal entry of Stone Silas. So Silas Stone is obviously this guy right here, okay? And in the footage, this is what Diana saw. So maybe using that name Silas Stone, she was able to, this is obviously after the time in BVS, and she did look a little bit jarred. After the, you know, seeing Cyborg come to life, she probably dug a little deeper to find out who this thing was that came to life. And in so doing, she found out that, oh, Silas Stone's son, Victor Stone. So she probably knew more about Victor Stone than even Bruce Wayne knew about Victor Stone at the time, which is very interesting. Anyways, I just wanted to point that out to you. Now, having said that, here's the interesting thing about it. There isn't any direct evidence, it says, that Diana had found Victor's name, but in BVS, the recording gives Silas Stone's name, which you just saw. Diana was quite disturbed after watching the account of the birth of Victor Stone, because he was in pain when he was being brought to life by the mother box. You see here? And so it says, we were able to see how much more disturbing it was with other footage she gathered in Justice League, that Silas, in fact, ended up stripping away a lot of Victor's body until he was a lifeless corpse with a beating heart and some brain activity. And that's what I want to show you guys right now. So if you remember in Justice League, we actually begin seeing footage of Victor Stone coming to life. And she pulls up Victor Stone's file, and in it, we see this account here. Now, some of you think that this account is post Victor Stone being brought back to life by the mother box and becoming Cyborg. And you're saying that this is Cyborg. And the thing to support what you say, it really comes from this account here by Cyborg himself, where he says, my father thought he could use the mother box to rebuild the broken parts of me with a few cybernetic enhancements. Instead, he built a living machine and made me stronger than its host. The interesting thing about this is you can assume, right? You can assume that, you know, because of Joss Whedon, maybe, that it's saying here that it's really after the mother box fused with Cyborg that then Silas Stone decided to put on some cybernetic enhancements on him, Victor Stone. And in fact, that wasn't enough, that, you know, that Silas actually built a living machine instead. And this account up here is really after Victor Stone became Cyborg. I disagree with that hugely, and I don't think that's the interpretation of it for one major reason. Well, actually two. The first one is, if you look here, Victor Stone has his entire arm here. But in this account, you can see he has a stump, and he doesn't even have a full torso. Here, he has a full torso with a belly button and everything. He's there, his head and everything. And it looks like he even has his legs. He doesn't have an arm, but he does have his legs, at least pieces of them, stumps of them. So that all of these limbs of his body were there. He didn't have an arm here. And therefore, it would be completely discontinuous to even think of it that way. And even if you go and look back at the footage on Justice League, you will see that Victor also had two eyes, two normal eyes. And if you look here at this corpse, which basically has a beating heart in it and stuff, if you look at this corpse thing, let me zoom in on it so you can see it better. He only has one normal eye. He has one normal natural eye. Let me zoom in some more. Hold on a second. It just got a little blurry. Okay. So if you see, he has a real eye here, and then he has this weird looking thing on him. Okay. So, and his face is even misshapen. And I can only believe, I can truly believe that, therefore, this happened after this here. Victor was actually a living person still. He was in great pain, but he's a living person. And then here, he looks like a cadaver. And it just so happens to have its heart beating. Look at this thing. He's wired up to a circuit board almost. Literally, this is a circuit board. This is like a motherboard, a computer board. You see the capacitors there, and you see the little maybe memory card or whatever it is slotted in. And then you have an outline of his, you can see his rib cage here. You can see his shoulder bones and his collarbones. And then you see his heart right here beating. So his heart's beating. And what's really making his heart beat? You can see this tube-like pump thing that's causing that to be so. It's crazy. It's like Frankenstein. And no wonder Victor is alluding that his father is the monster. It's really crazy. And so what I believe this is really saying is that his father actually put on cybernetic enhancements on Victor before, and it failed. And he was actually still dying, and his body was decaying and decaying away until he looked like this corpse here that his father somehow managed to preserve. And he had to cut off things and cut off things, okay, until he had this stump with a head. But you can see it looks dead, okay? It looks like a dead body. And then when he used the mother box, he put back on the cybernetic enhancements, And the mother box seemed to make these enhancements. Well, life was breathed into them. And because of that, these enhancements actually covered Victor Stone's body. So that what you have here is actually a cybernetic covering of Victor Stone's frail little body on the inside, and a twinning to his body. And how we know this is because when you look at Superman's X-ray vision on Cyborg, let me zoom in a little bit more on this so you can see it in better detail. There you go. That's just beautiful, isn't it? If you look at it here, you can see that this is Victor's skull right here, but it's twinned to the cybernetics that Silas Stone put in. But since there's life in those cybernetics now that's sustaining and maintaining Victor, these cybernetics, which is the host of Victor now, is it's twinned to his body. And just to make that abundantly clear, if you look here, this is where Victor's heart is. It's still beating, right? And therefore, it's twinned to the cybernetics as well. So this life that went into the cybernetics of Victor are not into Victor himself, but it twins, it moves in between Victor and the cybernetics, keeps Victor alive. And it's interesting, you see Victor's bone still. You see his shoulder bone and then his clavicle here. All right, and he's still got ribs underneath this. So I believe that the cybernetics kind of envelop his body, his frail little torso that he has. Oh, Victor's basically a torso, or a piece of a torso with some stumps, and he's got a head and a brain. You know, he's got his mouth appendage and his skull, okay, and the bones that accompany it, his little vertebral column that's chopped off, okay? That's what's so amazing about this, that, you know, Victor goes on to say, as he says right here, Victor goes on to say that basically he built a living machine, but made me stronger than its host. So the machine's host, which is the life force in the machine, Victor is stronger than that. So Victor kind of controls the machine, at least until he interfaced with the Kryptonian ship, and the machine part of him got stronger and was able to do whatever it wanted. He couldn't control it at that point in time. And it's interesting because that's a foreshadowing of what Steppenwolf said to him, that, you know, and a creature of chaos, he said. And it's interesting because Superman also has that energy, that extra life force, that host twinning with him. So as we say, Victor on the host of his body, the robotic part of his body that's alive, that is a symbiont. Victor and that host are symbionts of each other. And similarly, Superman is a symbiont to the life force that kept him alive, which is why Superman can turn bad. It's just possible. And as well as Victor can turn bad. Not necessarily Victor consciously wants to be bad, but his host can get stronger than him and make him do things he doesn't want to do. So it's just very interesting. And of course, this host will later be known as the Grid, but that's another story for another day. All right, so just looking at the synopsis of this, I am sure you can hear me now, my subscribers. It says there, so it was disturbing that, you know, Silas Stone had to do these horrific things. And I think this was what this part of the movie was kind of cut out a bit. But in fact, Silas seemed to have to be forced to strip away Victor's body until he's just a lifeless corpse with a beating heart and some activity. He ends up becoming a living machine. Well, he's not, Victor himself is not a living machine. Victor himself is alive and sustained life through the machine that's keeping him alive. All right. The machine's keeping him alive. So if there is a brain, Victor has a brain, and this energy, this life energy, it flowed through both Victor and the machine. But at the end of the day, he's still being kept alive by the machine part of him. And so we see some of his human parts within the machine through Superman's X-ray vision, which I thought was very cool that it can elucidate that. The point, anyway, is that, remember, in Scripture, it speaks about the Lord God, his law, being the person's hiding place and his shield. And we can see with Victor, basically the machine part of him is his hiding place. Victor's behind that, so he's protected from any adversity through that because of his body. And it's also his shield. It protects his heart, literally, and also mixes with his heart as well. And so I just find that very interesting, that Victor kind of, in a metaphor or an analogy, kind of sums up what we're seeing. Hey, here it is again, Victor. And look here. This is not Victor. This is a dead corpse. But nonetheless, you can see just how scary that is. Look at that corpse-looking thing. Oh my God, so horrific. But you can see his heart is still beating because of the machine thing that's up in him. keeping his heart beating. And of course, this is not circulating to his body per se. And all of these things are basically some, neural, neural connections to his body, and maybe also circulating blood back to his body as well. It's really crazy. This actually looks like a motherboard of some kind. And I just wanted to point out something else I forgot to point out to you guys. So let me point it out. That Victor actually has a skeleton, as you can see here. So this is his upper torso here, and you can see from the side, and there's his skeleton right there. It's kind of twisted, but there you go. That's a skeleton right there. So I thought that was really cool as well. I love sci-fi for that reason. They give so much details, and they make it almost feel real, like you can believe it. Anywho, I want to share that with you guys. I'm pretty sure people can hear me now because I can see the bar actually working. So I'm sure you guys can hear me. I just say, yay, if you're hearing me. Can you guys hear me? Well, let me just make sure. I'm pretty sure the bar actually working. So, okay, good. I'm pretty sure you guys can hear me. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that concerning Cyborg. So long I wanted to say this stuff. And I want to talk about a bunch of other things. So as a community, you guys can actually keep people honest and accountable, and you can actually make things happen. In my country recently, people in their communities have reported about certain areas which are not being kept properly, and because of that, there's sites, because there's a lot of bush and growth and stuff growing up in there. There's sites where crimes are being committed, rape and murders have happened in those areas, and they're saying they want these places cut down, and they're asking the county to hold the people who are owners accountable. And if they don't hold the owners accountable, then at least clean up and set out the place. And if they won't do it, then the citizens will have to do it. Another thing I wanted to talk about was citizens arrest. Do you know that you guys have the power to arrest even police officers if you have correct cause? And online there's a lot of hate crimes and stuff that are done. I want you to give you an example of a hate crime. Somebody calling somebody up anonymously because this person's come into their neighborhood, has entered a house. Instead of asking the person, why are you doing there and why are you entering the house, when they could have legitimate reasons for doing so, they decide to call up these people because they think they shouldn't be in the neighborhood. One lady, she told a guy to leave the neighborhood. He came in because he had bought a property and he's going to sell it back. He's going to fix it up and sell it back. He happened to be a black person going into a white community. And this woman, she was so racist, she just came out and told him he needed to leave the neighborhood. And she called the cops on him. He explained to the cops, he had his paperwork and everything, and the cops had to restrain the woman. And they were, and these are things which are hate crimes. They're literally hate crimes. This person actually committed a crime. They don't even realize it. They called up the police on forced charges, forced allegations, and then they want to give, they want to give flack for that. And the police officer, he said that he could have locked her up and carried her away, but he wanted to give her a chance. All right, and there are a number of other things happening, and we saw a police officer in the United States of America again arrest a black man who's waiting on his daughter in a university. He was sitting upstairs. Of course, he didn't give the officer his name. Then the officer asked him his name, so he probably should have provided that information. But it was not grounds for him to be arrested, and he was a normal person. And I just remember being in the United States of America and being as a black person in the United States of America. And I remember how much people seem to have intimidation for black people because of the sort of, what do we call those things? Stereotypes that are associated with black people, that they steal things. And always a black seems to be always negative. All right. And I really didn't care because I really didn't business. I didn't care. I mind my own business. So if you are afraid of me, I'm not afraid of you. And I don't think you should be afraid of me. I've seen people follow me around in the stores as well as I'm going to purchase things. And I think the stereotype about black people is a real one, where a lot of people don't realize black people are just like anyone else, which is why, again, Black Lives Matter is very important. I think the value of black lives, people always feel, oh, it's just black people, they can get killed. And even black people feel that way about other black people. They don't treat them with respect like they do other races. And I find that really sad. And why is it everything negative has to be associated with a black person? So I totally agree with Black Lives Matter on what they're doing. The hooligans that are associated, that are doing all these crimes and looting and that sort of stuff, they're not associated with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a separate entity to that. And it's about social consciousness, about making people realize, no, you cannot be treating black people like this. And you see so many incidents now. I've seen so many incidents over recent time in various ways, how there have been racially racial prejudice against black people. You've seen black people always being stopped by police. They're always stopped by police if they have a nice car or nice something. You see them being harassed everywhere they go. They're being arrested. If they're even in the right, nobody's asking questions. They just arrest them. I don't like that. That is disrespectful. It is also disruptive. It is also inconveniencing people for doing the right thing. I saw a guy get arrested on a bus for stopping a guy from molesting a child. Okay. And of course, he ended up in an altercation where he had to defend himself and he bust the guy's nose. But at the end of the day, the guy deserved it. Okay. And it's a good thing they taped it. Okay. And the cops went for the guy, the black guy, who had done the right thing. And he happened to be a university student who was doing very well at the university. He could not have a case against him. And you know what's the interesting thing? That incident is still going to stay on police records, even though it has been expunged as there's no charges against him. It's still going to stay on police records. So they're going to always try to hunt this guy down. Not that I care. I don't give a damn if it was me. But at the end of the day, that is ridiculous. This guy was stopping something horrible from happening. And the molester should have gotten punched stupid, but the molester actually attacked him first. And it's all on tape. The other thing is, so as communities, it's not enough to just observe sometimes. If police officers are doing the wrong thing, you need to be very vocal about it. And if the police officers continue to try to apprehend a suspect, sometimes you guys have to apprehend the police officers under the recommended acts of a citizen's arrest. You just arrest them. Okay, because these guys need to understand they need to be put in their place. And you do that in numbers. So if you find that it's not good, you just get all the other citizens will be observing. 20 of you guys just go at one officer and arrest his ass. Okay, arrest him. Say, hey, officer, you're doing the wrong thing. This is the wrong procedure. We will have to arrest you. This is now going to be an arrest. We're announcing an arrest. You did not announce an arrest to this guy. You did not follow the proper protocol. We're going to arrest you for this because this guy is innocent. And proceed to do so. And say, surrender your weapon. And if he pulls the weapon, then you will have to say, okay, you're resisting a citizen's arrest. That's one charge against you. And if you continue in your violent acts towards these citizens here or going to arrest you, and you will only make your situation worse. They need to know that they're accountable. And you guys have to make them accountable. And the only way is collectively. As a collective group, you can do it. Singularly, you can't. But as a collective group, you can. The guy who was arrested in the university for waiting on his daughter. Yes, he didn't give his name. He didn't have to give his name to the police officer by law. When they ask, they can request who you are, but they can't interrogate you and demand you give them your name. You can't really do that. You can demand that they give you their name. But you can, and these officers are behaving like if they're the law. They're not the law. They are the implementers of the law, and they have to do it right. And for the police officers, I would say this. Because there are a lot of good police officers out here who do the right thing and they know what to do. You have to assess situations correctly, which means you have to start asking questions. You have to look for witnesses and you have to ask the witnesses what is going on. If it is an immediate situation where you have to get the person under control, and that means handcuffing them, that's a different story. That's where that person may be flailing or attacking you, whatever. Then you have to defend yourself. But if the person is not flailing, attacking, and they're sitting down and they're talking to you, and you are trying to put handcuffs on them for no reason whatsoever, that means you are confused and this situation is overwhelming for you. As a police officer, you must know what to do. That means you must stay calm and you must be ready to use your weapon. Yes, but you're not going to use your weapon on everything. And the next thing is there's too much aggression by these officers. They're way too aggressive. Okay. As a police officer who is trying to keep the peace, you need to listen to the people providing information around you. And you must be able to assess the situation pretty quickly, especially the beat cops, the cops who actually have to deal with cases and stuff. And another thing, when people call, the people who call unanimously 911 calls, and there are some 911 calls that are very useful and waste people's time. The neighbors who've been nosy neighbors who go out there and they realize there's a black person coming into the neighborhood and therefore they're going to give them fatigue and make sure they pull pops on them. Hopefully the cops will put them in, in handcuffs and carry them away. For those people, they need to be held accountable as well. And you as a citizen of a community need to hold them accountable, which means Nobody's going to just call a unanimous call, get away with it like a pussy punk. Okay. And to the police, a false call that is really the intent is a hate crime because this person doesn't belong to your neighborhood. No, you guys have to hold them accountable for that. And for the 911 calls, which are unanimous, they need to trace that call, find out what it is, and then the police need to launch an investigation. And if the police want to launch an investigation, then the community, it's onto the community to get a private investigator and run their own investigation. In other words, you as a community can't rely sometimes on the police because the police doesn't always protect you. Not all police are like that. Again, building a relationship between the police department and the communities is the way to go. Again, more talk than just action. And if the police officers, if you know who your police officers and police representatives of your community are, and one of the ways is the community invites the police to certain functions, whatever, you know, that's one of the good ways to do it. And you guys have a good rapport between each other, the community and the police. And people outside of the community coming into the community, one of the things people of the community can do is you can go and see them and befriend them or even call them out. Hey, are you new neighbors? What's up? Hello. What's your name? Hi. How you doing? You know, you can do it like that. You can you come and, you know, start talking to them. If they don't want to answer you, okay, that's step one. They're not saying anything. Fine. You're trying to find out what's going on. And that's fair enough. You should be able to find out what's going on first. You know, and if they're not answering you or they're not paying heed to you, then you can go across there and say, hello, hi, my name is so I'm in the neighborhood. Are you new neighbors coming into this neighborhood? You can do that. It's to me, it's common sense to at least try to attempt to contact these people. Now, if they want nothing to do with you after that, well, okay. Now you have to just observe them. You have to give it time. You can't just go calling the police on them because they're in your community. That's stupid. You have to pay attention. Be wise. Keep an eye on them as a community. You can call your neighbors and let them keep an eye on them to see what's going on. It makes sense. I'm not telling you don't be aware of who's coming in your community and who are these people and what are they about. That's common sense. But when it becomes something where you just call the police on them, you don't know who these people are, you just call the cops on them. I've seen people call the cops, and that just leads, if these people were to be your neighbors, it just leads to rift. You know, is it that you just want your community to break apart? No. If you want your community to be cohesive, if they're black people and they're the first black people to come into your community, and then they come and they greet and they come next door and they greet the neighbors or whatever, and they're black and you guys are white, and vice versa. If you guys are black and these people coming into your neighborhood are white, then greet them. If this is usually a black community and it's only mostly black people and a white person comes in there, come on, you got to greet them and get to know them. And stop being so, I don't know what's wrong with people. Just because someone is different from you, it's all of a sudden it's weird. No, it's actually cool. It's new. It's a new experience. Get to know the people. Their skin color is so superficial. There's so much more than their skin color. And I think that's the problem with us as individuals. We don't deal with people as individuals. Now, let me talk about a couple other things that I wanted to talk about. So the DCEU is a community in and of itself. There are a bunch of people in the community of the DCEU who actually love the DCEU. And that's really cool as well. And my point is that as a community, as a DCEU community, we should get to know each other beyond just the DCEU. So these are just some of the things I just wanted to throw out there. There's a ton of other things I want to throw out there. But I always think that numbers, getting to know each other, and relationships are the key to everything that we need to do out here. All right. All right, man. I just wanted to share that with you guys with Cyborg and the DCEU and communities. There's a whole bunch of stuff I really wanted to talk about, but it kind of fizzled out on me because of the internet and just the problems of getting this video up. This is my third attempt at trying to get the video up. So, yeah. But shout out to each and every one of you guys who are my subscribers. I hope you guys are having a great day. I have so much more to share with you guys. Hopefully we can do that in time. All right. You guys have a great one.